Yeah, first of all, I discovered you through a friend who was like, "Hey, man, you might want to like check out this guy's videos. He seems like he's in the same vein as you."
Hmm.
Checked out your stuff, and your editing is extremely trippy. That's for sure. I love it. I think it's great, man. It's got that like Frank Yang feel, like it's just like your own thing, which is awesome. And the only it seems like the only conclusion I can come to from you know all every anything that you've been putting out recently is that we live in it seems to be some kind of matrix that is of paradox and of polarity, and really that's the only conclusion you can come to. And I think you even said
Right.
something like that, where it's like your level of consciousness depends on your ability to work with polarities, right, or
Right.
paradox.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I've been like, toying around with for a while, even before I got into spirituality. But I was doing it with the mind. But then it was until like recently when I had a few permanent shifts in consciousness that I sort of, in my direct experience, that I quote unquote went beyond the mind, that I really grasped it at the experiential level, how
Yeah.
everything co-creative, co-dependent, and paradoxical and contradictory. Because the mind, if you try to understand this with the mind, you can't, you really can't, because the mind is always going to be in duality. It's always going to be this or that, especially if you try to understand with language. So, yeah, I've been
Yeah.
digging pretty deep into that stuff for a while now, and then, like I said, you can't have a realization without an experience. You can't have an experience without intellectual understanding. So it's not that intellectual understanding is bad. It's not that experiences are bad. It's not like realizations are in itself its own thing. Like again, they're co-dependent arising, and they all like exist simultaneously. They're co-creating each other.
Yeah.
And if you want to look at it linearly as part of my own path anyway, I've always just had an intellectual understanding first. I read about it, I'm trying to understand with the mind, and then I have an experience of it, like a peak experience in meditation, or have like an insight or something. And then it locked into a realization where it became like sort of this permanent shift in, I wouldn't even say perception. It's really hard to put into words like what realizations are actually, because it's not exactly
Yeah.
like a perceptual shift. It's not exactly an experience. It's not exactly an intellectual understanding, but like I said before, it's all the above.
Can you say what is this change? Like if it's not perception, is it perspective? Is it just like what if you could describe with words to the best of your ability, what is this change and what does it involve? And what are the multiple steps of this change?
If I have to describe it in one word, I would say comprehension.
Mm,
It's because when you say comprehension, it's a little bit more nuanced than just say understanding, because understanding still implies that there's intellectual aspect to it. And when you say perceptual, that still implies that there's some kind of I guess experience. But it really feels like it's prior to any of the stuff, but it's also manifesting and giving rise to all the stuff at the same time.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's hard to put into words. Yeah, but there's definitely I mean, for sure, if you have a realization, you just know it. Like
Hmm.
knowing with a capital K, almost. It's kind of it's almost like it almost feels like a sort of like a cellular level kind of understanding.
Mm,
Like like if you look at how perception is formed, how thoughts are formed, how sensations are formed, how experiences are formed, there's something that's sort of underneath all that that's giving rise to it. It's kind of like a cell. Like, how like everybody is different, yet we're all made up this kind of like same cell in the beginning, kind of like that. But that oneness of the same cell is what manifests in the differences. So it's not just that, oh, there's just oneness or that there's just differences. It's that they coexist simultaneously and they're the manifestation of each other.
it's both.
Yeah, both and
Yeah.
neither. Yeah, it's both and neither.
Yeah, that's why the symbol of yin and yang it just resonates so much with us, because that's, I mean, putting it at the most simple form, that's quite literally what we are as human beings. Like we ride the line of yin and yang and all of those polarities. And it seems like that's what this state that you're in is it seems to coincide with, is it's riding the polarities of this universe, right?
Right. Yeah, but one has to be careful not to make that into the new ground, because like it's very tricky. It's very
Yeah.
easy for the mind to just want to grasp onto anything, you know, like even
Hmm.
after the fact, after you have this huge realization, in the mind will want to grasp onto that. But again, that doesn't mean that grasp on is wrong. You know,
Exactly.
grasping can only occur because there was non-grasping before that or after that, and time is also not linear because the future and the past and the present coexist simultaneously, and they gave the rise to each other. So that also means that none exists.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, I when you speak, man, I can feel it's almost like your passion in wanting to put these realizations into other people's heads with words, you know. But and sometimes I even question doing this podcast because I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Like putting concepts in these like these ideas into people's heads that really aren't like I don't know if they're really doing anything for anybody, but I just like to have a good time with it. Because I think, like you said, it's experiential. Like it really comes down to things that you do for yourself. Like somebody can listen to X amount of audiobooks or X amount of podcasts or do X amount of yoga poses or meditations or whatever. It really only comes down to what works for yourself, right?
Right.
So
I totally agree.
what worked for you? Like what was your like practice? And you said this is it and I'm gonna like hold to this until I, you know, come to my realization from underneath the Bodhi tree.
What was I doing before my shift or my shifts?
Yeah, if you
Or
want to like work up to like before your shift and then to the shift and what your actual like, you know, meditation practice was.
I started meditating in 2014, I think. I was doing TM for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took TM class. But
That's
before
cool.
that, I was like, when you say like putting ideas into people's head, that's what I've been doing even like for 10 years, even before that. Like I just had this inclination to like want to mindfuck people. Yeah, so like I guess you could say before it was mindfuck with a small M was like Frank Yang, so like artistic mind, this character that wants to be an artist, tries to like instill his artistic vision in other people's head. So it's like a mindfuck with a small M, but now it's more like a mindfuck with a big M. So it's not really about my ideas anymore nowadays. I don't really care about like my ideas per se that much.
Yes.
It's like I want other people to experience, you know, the quote unquote ultimate that they could experience themselves.
Yes. Through the
So
character of Frank Yang.
through this, so I'm sort of just using this mitsu as this conduit to try to find the best words, try to find the best visual metaphors, images to come close to what I'm experiencing right now, so other people can experience it. Yeah. But
Mm.
that, you know, that doesn't mean that what I'm experiencing right now is, you know, is the quote unquote truth of the ultimate. But it is what it is. It's, you know, I don't know anything else for sure. But I can tell you from direct experience that ever since the shift and this entire journey, I pretty much eliminated suffering. And I think most people, that's what most people want. You know, most people might not want like, you know, the ultimate insight into like nature of consciousness, or they might even want to get mind fucked. But most people will want to reduce suffering. They want to be happy, independent of conditionings.
Mm.
And for me, for myself, that's always like a byproduct. Like I never really care about like reducing suffering. That's not to say I didn't suffer. I think I suffered a shitload before the shift, and just my whole life. I think I suffered a lot. Um, but it's nothing major. It's just like I had a you know, manic depressive personality. I don't know if it's a personality or it's a real illness, but I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I was
Mm.
struggling with like depression and sex addiction and ADHD. You know, quote unquote, like on paper
Yeah.
that what I would probably be diagnosed as before, and then all of a sudden they were just gone. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. So if people want to ask me about, you know, tips about this and that, usually they're coming from a spot where they want to reduce suffering. And I'm not saying what I'm saying about the nature of, you know, reality or consciousness is true, but I'm saying experientially, I've reduced suffering, I would say by about 99.9%.
That's a good percentage. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
well, wait, let's go back to the TM first. Well, actually, it's kind of related. I got a TM because I was struggling with like masturbation and sex addiction, so I wanted to reduce my sex drive. So that's
Hmm.
why I started meditation. But at the same time, I was also contemplating on philosophy of the mind and consciousness, stuff like that. That's just always been my passion. Um, so I was doing them simultaneously. That's part of my, the continuation of my, path into self exploration of the mind. And I was struggling with sex addiction, so I got into TM. And after TM, I started to get into mindfulness a little bit, and I thought like, mindfulness. I read Sam Harris's book Waking Up, and he didn't talk about TM. He talked about this other type of meditation that has similarities, but relatively speaking, they're quite different. So I started getting into mindfulness a little bit, and then I realized there was this thing called Vipassana meditation, where it's all about mindfulness. So you basically just, be mindful of your sensory reality down to the microscopic level by focusing on your body. And you do that for 12 hours a day for 10 days in silence. And then I was like, this is my next step. And I just knew that was my next step. And I signed up for a retreat in 2016. So after I went to that retreat, it was like a tipping point. It was like, I think that was my first major shift where I was like, there's something in this spirituality thing. There's something in this meditation thing that
Hmm.
that could really be something that I want to dedicate my life to. And how everything else I was doing in my life previous to that was just kind of like a side note to this, was just kind of like means to this end, was just like a combination. Like everything I was doing before was like the ground of I call it contemplative fitness practices,
Hmm.
stealing from Kenneth Folk, because I was really into fitness before, So and
Yeah.
a lot of my viewers are into fitness, so like I used to work like contemplate fitness to try to get people into it. It's like training for the mind, training for the
Hmm.
mind. Okay, yeah.
Hmm.
So everything I was doing before, like the art, the music, the violin, and the filmmaking, and the philosophy, and the science, all that stuff could be sort of balanced out and held together pretty neatly with with contemplative fitness practices. So I kept going with that.
Hmm.
And for the next like 2 years, I was meditating. I was doing just purely body scanning vipassana. That was my only practice. I was just getting my body up and down from head to toe, 2 hours a day for about 2 years before I went to the next retreat, which was in 2019. So like almost 2 years ago, and that was I would say my second major shift. Where if you want to read the my progress from the Theravada progress of insight map. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Daniel Ingram's work in the maps of insight.
I'm actually not. No.
Okay, cool, man. But you could check that out too. Like,
Yeah, I've heard of Daniel Ingram,
you've
but
heard
I've
of it,
just
yeah.
never really explored any of his work.
Okay, cool. So, well, okay, then we won't go. We won't go there for that podcast because usually people that interview me are kind of familiar with his work because I talk about his work a lot. But
Yeah,
anyway,
unfortunately, no.
that's cool. So basically, my second retreat was when I entered Stream Entry, where if you want to place my insights or my progress on that map. Well, his map is not original. He's basing his map more like a postmodern version of the Theravada map, the Theravada Buddhism map.
On the
Where
Jhanas?
no, it's well, the jhanas are sort of part of it, but Stream Entry is more like what they call the first level of awakening, where you after you cross that threshold, there is no going back. You are in the stream, and that stream will carry you to the quote unquote fourth path, where they call arahantship.
Hmm.
Yeah. So on the retreat on 2019 was when I entered Stream Entry, when I had my first fruition experience, or nibbana, or cessation,
Hmm.
where consciousness just basically shuts off and then comes back on. And that is for on that path, that's a pivotal moment, because that's when you get the insight of how everything in reality is constructed, particle by particle by particle. The self is constructed, sensations are constructed, perceptions is constructed. Basically, the entire sensory reality, even infinite space, is fabricated moment by moment by moment. Yeah,
And that's
and
just the first step, right?
that's just the first step. Yeah, that's what they call stream entry, and that's I would say that shift was only like 1% of the next couple of shifts.
It's insane because you just described
Yeah.
a very profound topic, and it's like, well, that's only the first step. So what's the second step? If you could
Well,
sum that up.
after that, you go through three more paths until you reach the fourth path. The middle paths was more like energetic shifts. Well, I mean, all the shifts are kind of their difference are quantitative, not qualitative. So basically, everything, all the insights that you get from the fourth path or the quote unquote final path, you get already on the first path.
Oh, okay.
But you just have a glimpse of it. And on the fourth path, you lock it into a permanent shift in experience and perception and cognition.
Oh, so throughout your awakening journey, you get glimpses of what it's like to be fully awakened in a way?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say because I made a video, I think 3 months ago, where I remember saying that you can't really have a full glimpse of awakening because once you do, you're there.
Oh,
So
okay.
so I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that one. Like a lot of those insights or experiences or shifts. And when you like try to like intellectualize or rationalize it, looking back on it, it's hard to describe exactly what the fuck went on.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to compare this glimpse with this shift and whether how much of this glimpse translated to that shift and vice versa. So I would say just in a very vague way that the first shift was only about 1%. Like when I say 1%, I'm not talking about the actual experience or the actual glimpse. I'm talking about the perceptions I have right now versus the perception, the permanent shifts in experience that I'm experiencing moment to moment. That's locked in now comparing to the first shift. That was only like 1% of this.
Oh, I see. I know what you mean.
Yeah. But in the middle of the path, when you have like a really crazy, like energetic explosions, like Kundalini awakenings, where all your chakras open up, like jhanas and samadhis, all that crazy stuff. That's like this powerful psychedelic trips. Those could be really intense or not so intense. It varies, but they're peak experiences. And realization is not an experience, peak experience. Peak experiences are only means to an end to lock something permanently. That's what I'm interested in. Yeah. My motto is this, like a lot of people talk about psychedelics, which I agree psychedelics are really important tools on the path. Even for me, like I've experienced with psychedelics to know that they're one of the most useful tools on this work, for this work. My motto is that are the insights and the experiences you have on psychedelics, the highs you have on psychedelics, are they here right now? If it's not here right now, it wasn't a memory, and memories aren't here anymore, so it doesn't exist. But that doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean that on a relative level, those memories, whatever exists in the past couldn't have translated to what's happening right now. I'm not saying that, so that's why I'm saying, that they're the pivotal moments, those peak experiences. But whatever is not here in my direct experience of consciousness right now, it's not here.
I know what you mean. Just don't become too attached to those experiences, but they might have had some kind of significance for what you're going through at this current moment. But if you continually dwell on that, then that's just going to mess up the moment right now. I know what you mean.
Yeah. But then a lot of people get stuck on being saying like, oh, the moment right now is it. I don't have to do anything. But that's not quite true either because the present moment right now, after that last shift, was very different from the present moment right now before there was any kind of shifts.
That's so hard to put into words.
I don't know how to explain it. Yeah.
No, I know what you mean though.
It's the same, but it's different. It's the same, but it's different. Yeah. I wouldn't say, oh, it's there's nothing like when when they say when you kind of are done with the path, that's never really done. Like when I say done, I'm speaking only from a pretty limited perspective. But there is a switch that really does feel done in the sense that you stop searching. But once you stop searching, I'm still practicing. You're still practicing. You're still exploring. So right now it's more like just exploring for fun, and it's happening by itself, rather than there's a spiritual seeker called Frank Yang that wants to be awakened. That's totally gone.
Oh,
for sure.
I see.
So there is a point where that's gone. That search, that journey to search for something that's already here is gone. Yeah. So,
but you're still chopping wood and carrying water.
Yeah, and making videos and talking to you and breathing and drinking coffee and yesterday I watched Batman and Robin.
That's awesome.
Just clips of it on YouTube.
So you would think that the idea of awakening, quote unquote, is like, like a monk, shaved head, some guy that's been meditating in the Himalayan cave for 30 years. And then you say, I just watched Batman and Robin yesterday. People are like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's not an enlightened thing to do for somebody. But you said something on the podcast that you did with your friend that he asked you if you would ever become a monk, and you're like, no, I don't think a lot of them are, I don't know what you said specifically, but are, as awakened as they think they are. Right. And I think what it is because these people are, it seems to be, it's almost like they're almost there. It's like they're attached to the idea of being unattached. You know what I mean? It's like this lifestyle of, I have to get nirvana. Like I have to become awakened and live the monastic life. When, I get it and it makes sense, but I think there's more to life than nirvana, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense.
And that's where I think you're getting at. It's like, it's everything. It's more like, what's on the other side of nirvana is like what's important. It's like, it's the whole package,
Nirvana is samkara.
Yeah, it's
Nirvana
like yin and yang.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why on the last picture of the the ox pictures, like the 10 ox pictures, in Buddhism they have this illustration for the path of awakening. So before I was talking about the 4 paths of, Theravada Buddhism, but every tradition has its own like map. And if you really want to compare different maps from different traditions, they're all kind of like the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all pretty much the same. So in the 10 ox picture, you have those 10 pictures, basically 10 steps to awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first couple of pictures, you see like the tail of an ox. You should know the first pictures, you see that you just live in light, right?
Let me see. I'll pull it up right now as you're explaining. 10 ox picture.
Yeah, 10 ox picture. It's from Zen. I'm not sure the exact pictures, what the exact pictures represent. I can't pull out from the top of my head, but I think the first one is just you just being a normie, living a normal life. And then the second one, I think it's when you see some footprints of oxes. You see, you're walking around and you see footprints, and you discover that, wait a second, what is this footprint? Like, I want to find out more about like where this footprint is coming from, and that's kind of like your first minor or small glimpse into like the ultimate reality or whatever it is. And then you see like a tail. You start meditating, you see a tail. That's when you get a really good taste of what it is you're looking for, but only for like a split second. You see the tail, maybe you touch it, but then it slips away. So that the whole ox represents enlightenment basically. And then I think the 4th or 5th, I don't know, but then there's a whole.
Let me see. Is this the picture right here? I tried to.
Yeah, that's the picture right there. Yeah, the one, the circles.
I'm trying to find a bigger one, but they don't really have it. Like this. There we go.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. So basically, the ox represents enlightenment, and you start to get more glimpses of the ox as you go on the path and you start searching, and then eventually you caught the whole ox. And when you caught the whole ox, you still gotta ride it and tame it, and then you gotta let go of the ox. And we let go of the ox after you tamed it, after you become really good riding the ox. You become just another normal normie again, go back to the marketplace and, whack off or share the insights or but just don't hurt other people.
Exactly. Just don't hurt other people.
Don't hurt other people, yeah. And then, but see, that's why I said at the beginning, when we started this topic, that everything is totally different, yet everything is the same.
Mm.
So my metaphor is kind of like before you are just live in the world, and then you see, and then you bump into like a screen or something, and behind the screen you peek into another world, like behind the matrix or whatever, right? And then mid path you stick your head like inside that mirror, inside that screen, and then you're kind of like half your body is in that, in this world, half that body is on the other side, and you just kind of walk around. That's kind of like riding the ox. And then the final step, you go even beyond that. You go back into that. You completely get immersed and get sucked in and disappear into the other side. And there's no more mirrors. There's no more screens. There's no more bubbles of anything. There's no more bubbles of awareness. There's no more like screens of consciousness. And you just kind of, find yourself totally immersed in this new world. But this new world, paradoxically, is exactly the same as the world from before.
Yeah. Man, that is... So
you go full circle.
Yeah, it's always a circle, man. And that's what it is. It's always polarities. It's just, it's always comes back to, it's this, but it's also this.
Yeah. It's this, but it's also that, and it's neither in both.
Yeah, that's great. So what?
I'll say the major differences, if I have to quantify, is that before you're a separate person walking around the world, and then you become the world. I am the universe. Before you were like, okay, there's Frank Yang and there's the world.
Yeah.
There's the subject and then this object, the universe there. And then during mid-path, you merge with the universe. That's when you get a lot of those insights where you feel like you're unity, like unity consciousness, oneness, God consciousness, stuff like that, where you, oh, I'm the universe, I'm the whole universe. But then there's still really subtle separation there. But if you're not like, if you don't go beyond that, you don't notice it. You think that's the final stage.
Mm-hmm.
So then you start going, oh, I am the universe. But then after that, you're a person again. But then you're also not a person. You're neither a person nor the universe.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I would say the biggest difference is kind of like, here's another metaphor. It's like before you're in the matrix, and then afterwards you're erased from the matrix, but the matrix still goes on. But the Franken character, the Franken Mitsu, is still going on, just like before the matrix. But now the identification has shifted into not just being the Franken character. It's neither just a Franken character, nor there's no Franken character. There's only the matrix. That's still the polarity of it. At the end, it's both and neither. So you still get to be a person, and you can be not a person, or you can be the universe, or you can be both simultaneously. That's the reflexivity that you get from having this kind of symmetry, I'll call it, this balance in experience, is that you get to shift back and forth. It's like a really fine lever that you're like tuning all the time. Like, it depends on the situation. You can experience unity, or you can experience separateness, or you can experience both simultaneously.
Exactly. You're the show and the actor.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
It depends on the situation.
Oh yeah.
The situation. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's like you're the show and the actor at the same time.
Yeah, the show and the actor at the same time, and also the stage. And also
everything.
Everything.
Props.
But also none of those things. You can also be none of those things. You can also just disappear into what I call the warm blanket of the universe, where you literally just don't feel like you literally in that state. Somebody can like try to shoot me with a gun, and I wouldn't give a fuck. That's not how you want to be like for 24/7, because if I don't care about myself, I don't care about my Mitsu, there's probably a good chance that I don't care about you either. I don't care about other people's Mitsus either. You know?
Right. Yeah.
But there's a place in time where that's useful. But there's also a place in time where it's useful to be a separate person. Yeah. There's a place in time where it's useful to feel like you're God consciousness. And there's a place where you feel like you're not consciousness.
Yeah. It's situational. It really is. It's so true. And
the situation is giving rise to manifesting your state of being. So it's not like you're intentionally trying to manipulate your state of being to fit the situation. The two are, codependent arising. So it doesn't really feel like, oh, I'm going through my life and I'm playing I'm playing a video game where, oh, this situation calls for a unity consciousness. I'm going to shift into that. Or this situation calls for a separate entity. I'm going to go into that mode. It doesn't feel like that. It's just kind of happening by itself with like the whatever it's the conditions are. At the moment.
I know what you mean, man. It's just like it just seems like you've falling into who you truly are, man. I know that sounds corny, but it just seems like you're going with the flow, but you're even beyond the flow. Like you're with the flow, or in the flow's with you. Like you're beyond. Yeah. You're just beyond that. It's just.
I wouldn't say beyond either, because that I don't know. You're not really beyond anything, but at the same time, you know what I mean.
Yeah, at the same time, you're
you are. You are.
Yeah, man. It's So what to any layperson, our conversation so far, they'd be like, "What are these guys talking about?" Right? So,
but you've interviewed a lot of like spiritual practitioners, so like a lot of monks and stuff, though. So
yeah. So I mean, my audience definitely. We're in the realm of the usual conversations, definitely. Let's say somebody's never heard this before, and just some random dude at Walmart starts to listen, right? And he's like, what are these guys talking about? Like, what am I going to get from this? So what would you say practically you get from these kind of states of awareness and consciousness and becoming the fourth stage of enlightenment? Does it make you a better person overall?
I would say overall, it definitely makes me a better person, but that's not a given. That's not a. It's a correlation, not a causation.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you
Like,
think so? That's some like sci-fi Star Wars stuff right there, like the dark side and the light side. You think somebody could awaken to these states and not become a good person and use these powers, quote unquote, for nefarious reasons?
of course, you see all the Zen teachers, a lot of Buddhist monks, not monks, mostly teachers. A lot of teachers and masters, they abuse their students,
Yeah.
and they sort of abuse their powers for financial gain, sexual gratifications, all kinds of stuff.
Do you think
It
they're
actually happens.
actually
It
like
actually
there
happens
though?
more than. It actually happens more than not. I would say.
Yeah, I believe it because it's just that's human nature, to for
Yeah,
some
and
reason take advantage.
I think they're. I think most of them are there in the sense that I look at them like spiritual athletes. Like
Mm,
LeBron James is a good athlete, but you don't expect him to be a good person, even though he isn't really a bad person.
mm,
You
okay.
don't. You wouldn't expect like an Olympic sprinter to be a good person. But that's not to say that if you're an Olympic sprinter, you're not going to be a good person. You just don't
Yeah.
correlate the two together. But for some reason, for spirituality, people lump those together. But I think there's some rings to that. There's some truth to that. But I think if you lump those two together in a very absolute sense, that's a mistake because you're just gonna be it's kind of like Kevin Spacey. You're just like, oh, Kevin Spacey abused a bunch of little boys. I'm not gonna watch his movies anymore. But
Mm,
before you knew about his incidents, you enjoyed his movies, you like Kevin Spacey, but just because Kevin Spacey did this and that, that doesn't really take away the art from the artist. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, the artist, like not who
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey and what his actions were. I know what you mean. Exactly.
Yeah, so was I inspired by Kevin Spacey's acting and became a better actor myself? Did I, extract insight out of Kevin Spacey's acting to become a better actor myself, so I can help other people become better actors? Sure,
Yeah, exactly.
without or with those incidents, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But with like in the whole Enlightenment business, people tend to lump morality and ethics with like insights.
Mm,
Yeah, but I would say that a lot of traditions, depends on the traditions. In Zen traditions, they don't focus on morality or compassion or like the heart or love at all. So that's why
mm-hmm.
you see a lot of Zen masters, they abuse their students. I think in Zen, there's a lot more than other traditions, but other traditions, they don't only focus on the insight axis or the wisdom axis. They also focus on the compassion, the ethical side of, the practice. Buddhism, they talk about compassions all the time because in Buddhism, they realize that if you realize emptiness and what I call absolute infinity, it just sounds better. Because when people say emptiness, especially in Western culture, when you tell people this is about realizing the true nature of the experience, which is emptiness, they're not going to want to get on the path. But if you tell them
Yeah.
this is about recognizing infinite potentiality or absolute infinity, they're going to be interested. But it's the
Yeah.
same thing. Anyway, so if you only recognize emptiness, like we said before, if I don't even care about the self because there's no one here, from the perspective of emptiness, there's no one here. True. And a lot of non-dual teachers get stuck in there. Oh, there's no one here, nothing to do, right? But if you only if you experience the world 24/7 from that perspective, which you can, then there's a good chance that if you don't even care about yourself, you're not going to care about other people.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no
Yeah.
one here, there's no subject here, there's not going to be objects. But
Yeah.
then here's the thing: you have to recognize emptiness first to fill it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
a lot of people don't recognize emptiness, and they get ahead of themselves and be like, "Oh yeah, everything is empty, so I can fabricate this and that and do this and that." But they're still doing it from the perspective of the separate self.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of Buddhists in Taiwan, um, they just go around and do compassion work all the time, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you talk to them, they don't really exactly have insights into emptiness.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying like if you want to relieve suffering, you want to really understand the true nature of experience, um, then if you're going around being compassionate, which again is great, it's better than not being compassionate, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Without recognizing that you're still doing compassionate work from the perspective of a separate person who's identified with being super compassionate, then you are still stuck in a box and you're not free. You're still clinging onto a ground or an ideology or a dogma of being a compassionate monk who is defined by compassionate actions.
Yes.
And after you recognize emptiness, after you realize that how everything is a fabrication, then you can refabricate anything you want.
Hmm.
And that's why the compassion and the morality training is important, because during the process of reconstructing everything, of filling out the emptiness with fullness, um, because you can fill that empty cup with anything you want, it's easy to fill it up with bullshit also, you know?
Mm.
That's why, but if you train the mind to sort of fill it up with like love and compassion, then that's probably better for humanity and, you know, for
Yeah,
the
definitely better for humanity. Yeah, I think that's the goal. Ideally, I don't know. Well, I mean, is that what do you get out of? I mean, I know not you don't do it to get anything. You know what I mean? It's not like a materialistic thing, but you know, like how do I phrase this? Um, I guess just simply, what's Frank Yang before and what's Frank Yang after? You know, like if
uh,
to somebody watching you, like to like you know to somebody that knows you closely or that knows you very well, like how has your demeanor changed? You think from an outside perspective?
I think definitely changed a lot. Before, I felt like I was doing it for the Frankian character. I was building up the Frankian character for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But then after I realized the Frankian character was a construct, the whole path is pretty much about deconstructing the Frankian character. Shred
Yeah.
the Frankian character along with everything his sensei experienced into tiny pieces of particles that are empty.
So
Yeah.
is it a process of deconstruction and then almost like constructing again, knowing that you're constructing something that was already constructed in the first place? Like I see like enlightening, and take it further if you can, please. It's like the enlightenment process is coming to the conclusion that there really never was any kind of thing such as enlightenment. It's coming to the conclusion that, and maybe better phrasing is that we've always been enlightened, or
True.
that like there is really no person that's being enlightened, and there's just enlightenment. There's just the actions of this enlightenment.
Right. That's actually my last inquiry, my last insight was that there was no one here to get enlightened. Like I knew that
Oh
before from reading
yeah,
books. I knew that
yeah.
before from reading books, but then
Hmm.
experientially, I didn't realize that because at
Yeah.
that point, I was in this like really crazy Jonic state where I was like, I felt like I was the whole universe, and that is a place where you can really do self inquiry at the deepest level. Because when you expand everything, when you dissolve all boundaries, um, when your mind is completely open in that regard, that's when self inquiry becomes the most effective. So I
Mm.
always tell people always ask me, should I do self inquiry or mindfulness, vipassana, meditation? Because the two are kind of different. But I say they complement each other and they should be done together. Just like how, you know, an Olympic sprinter, to be fast, you have to do plyometrics, you have to do box jumps to train speed. But at the same time, you also have to do like squats and weightlifting and get stronger because power is speed times strength.
Yeah. Yeah, meditation is like it is an exercise for the brain essentially.
Right. And so, what was I going with this? Yeah, so my last insight when I was in this really deep jhanic state of oneness of like unity consciousness, I was like, holy shit, this is like as crazy as like a 5 minute DMT trip. But that's when I realized who is having this experience, who is trying to get enlightened here, who thinks this experience is amazing, like a 5 minute DMT trip. And then I realized there's no one here to be enlightened or to experience any of this stuff. But that doesn't
Mm.
mean that there is no such thing as the experience. The experience still exists. But here's the thing, you can only experience anything fully if you disappear into it. So enlightenment cannot be possible unless you realize there is no enlightenment, or at least there's no enlightened beings. There's only enlightened activities. The universe or reality or consciousness wakes up to itself.
Mm.
So it's the field that wakes up to itself, and it's always been awake. And the
Yeah.
human is part of that field. The human is not separated from the field. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a field. It's like would you say it's like a wavelength or like a vibration that we just like touch upon?
You can say that. I mean, there are different ways that you can describe the field. Like you can even go to the quantum physics paradigm and say it's the quantum field, or you can go to the Hindu paradigm and say it's the Brahman. You know, or you can go to
Mm-hmm.
the Buddhist paradigm and say, oh, it's emptiness. Oh, that's
Mm.
there are just different ways to, I think, describing the same thing, the same being.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's that field that wakes up to itself. And that
Mm.
field is awake everywhere. That field, every corner of that field is equally empty and equally full and equally infinite and equally awake. That's why there's symmetry.
Do you
That's why
think?
one of the things I've been talking about is like the art of symmetry and balance. Because like I got contacted by like this neuroscientists and this like mathematicians. So they saw my videos. They want to see like they want to see what's going on in my brain, because I think they're doing this collective study on like, you know, on balance, on like neuroscience and how it relates to spiritual experiences and even psychedelic experiences and blissful states and all that stuff, right? So their premise is that a blissful mind, or a mind without suffering, or any kind of, you know, MDMA high or any kind of jhanas, are just a state of balance in your consciousness. Have you
Mm,
seen those pictures where it's like one point connects to every other point on the sphere,
yeah.
but it's also connected to itself? It's kind of
Mm,
like, yeah, I would imagine like a quote unquote awakened mind would kind of look like that.
mm,
And that sort of goes back to the yin and yang thing. If you're only standing on the ground of the self, you're not in a state of balance or symmetry. If you're only standing on the ground of oneness, of saying, oh, there's only like God consciousness, that's the true self, then you're jumping from the separate self to the no self, right?
yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
another ground. So the the only way you can really experience symmetry is when you stand on no ground at all. But then again, be careful not to make groundlessness the new ground, right?
Yeah.
Be
Like,
careful not to make that field, that Brahman, into like the new ground, into like the new self, the capital S. But be
yeah.
careful not to not make that into a new self either, you know?
It just keeps going, man. You can
It just
just
keeps
really
going.
just keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, it just keeps
It's
going.
infinity.
Yep.
That's really the only conclusion you can come to. It's like you can just keep going. Like, then don't make this the, don't make this the self, and then don't make not being the self, and then don't
Yeah,
make
right,
not
right.
being the self. Not, you can just like,
But then
oh man.
the funny thing, here's another funny paradox,
Mm-hmm.
another funny complementary. When everything's going constantly, when infinity just, have you seen those zooming images on YouTube where it's just like infinity zooming in itself, like
Yeah.
zzz, on
Yeah.
YouTube, right? So it's like constantly moving into infinity, like, right? So when everything is moving, nothing's moving. So if everything is arising and passing away simultaneously, and this everything is moving, really, that means like
Yeah.
nothing's moving, right? Because that's the polarity that gets balanced. Is that it when everything's moving at really high speed, nothing's moving at all.
Mm.
Impermanence at the deepest level is non-arising, non-passing. Just kind of how a film strip goes. When you meditate and when you try to dissect impermanence, how like, oh, you see through the microscopic components of movement and time and space, how each moment in reality is constructed frame by frame by frame by frame. But at the same time, at the deepest level, that frame is still. The frame is just a picture. It doesn't move.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
But because of that still picture, that's what's allowing and what's manifesting the movement, and vice versa.
Yeah. It's awesome. Oh, that's great, dude. If you don't practice, could you ever like, say you just sat on the couch, ate nachos for like 3 months, like where would your headspace be? Is it going to be the same still? Is it like once you open the door, you don't close it?
There's something that's permanently shifted. I can say that for sure, because I've gotten like drunk and I've like done a lot of like online shit, and I don't really care. But it's
Mm-hmm.
still like the background is still there. Like it's still there, but it could get blurred by
Yeah.
your action and your behavior, by the conditions. But I would say that the background context that's giving rise to the contents.
Mm-hmm.
The content can be anything. It could be doing compassion work, or you could be like getting drunk. It doesn't really matter. This is just content, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
content and the context are again still, they're dependent on rising. So,
Yeah.
but the content doesn't. The content can change, but the context doesn't change, and that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Because the content keeps changing, the context doesn't change. You know what I mean? On the relative level of the human experience, there is a background that doesn't move at all. It doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what you do. Yeah. But I'm still practicing, so it's hard for me to really say, because I'm still practicing, because I think realization is practice. Practice is realization. It's
Yeah.
kind of like you're just kind of it's like even if I don't sit on practice, I find my mind just automatically like sort of turn inward on itself, and I'm always like kind of doing inquiries like moment to moment.
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
it's happening by itself. It's sort of like that's part of the shift. I think that's part of the switch. Is that after that switch is flipped, no matter what you do, it's going on by itself. It's always trying to shift back to the state of equilibrium, no matter what you
Mm-hmm.
do, even if you're not in a state of equilibrium.
Mm. So what is your practice? If you could sum up like what you do, like have you ever done yoga?
I've done some yoga, yeah, but not that much. I can't say I'm a yoga expert.
Yeah.
I've done a few yoga classes, but just that the really traditional ones, probably the ones you're not into, like just like kind of, it's more like the yogas they do in Taiwan, where it's more like a physical exercise than a
Like what?
yoga. Like I've done like one or two Bikram yoga classes with my mom,
Oh yeah.
and stuff like that.
No,
But
that's intense.
that's intense. Yeah, that definitely has like benefits, even with the mind, of course. But just like lifting, lifting is good for the mind too. But
Mm.
in terms of like yoga from like the really ancient traditions, where you're just, it's more like a meditation, more like Kriya yoga.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of Kriya yoga before my awakening, where I was trying to activate my Kundalini a little
Hmm.
bit. Uh, but I kind of stopped because like I felt like my spine, like my head was gonna pop. I felt like
It's too much. It was too intense.
so I stopped. But then it popped after my first retreat. After I entered stream entry, it popped by itself. And I'll say doing the Kriya yoga during that period of time, a couple months only. Not I didn't do it for that long. But I think that definitely had something to do with it. So
Yeah, there is something to it, which is funny because it's such a simple exercise. It's just breathing and literally just going like this, in multiple positions, and it's really that simple if you want to, raise your Kundalini energy. I don't know. I don't think there's much science out about it at this point, but a lot of people can attest that Kriya yoga and Kundalini yoga, there's something to it, and I'm actually one of them as well. Like this, just I've had this one experience where it's just like I do the whole Kriya and just come to this, like it was just like this, I guess you could say it was this weird realization. It was like just it was like a sober psychedelic experience, just blending with the universe. And all I did, man, was breathe and arch my back, and probably 30 times. And that's it. Everybody can do that. It's insane, like how simple some of these practices are. All it takes is discipline, and it takes like just dedication, yeah, to what to I don't know to what to wanting to reach certain, peel the layers back of the human experience, I guess. And yeah, man, then you can finally reach some kind of happiness and negate suffering, like you said, right?
right. I had two things I would say about that. That's very interesting. Well, the first thing you say is like a sober psychedelic experience. That's exactly what I felt like
Yeah.
during my mini explosion and during some of the meditative deep states is a sober psychedelic experience. And the second thing you said about peeling the layers back of reality, that is, I think, if I have to draw a conclusion from what Kundalini awakening and what all those peak states are,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're the byproduct or the result of dissolving the separate self and dissolving the conditionings you have as a separate self.
Mm.
That's it.
So the
Yeah.
practices are a byproduct.
I think the result, like the experiences one has of like, sober psychedelic experience or
Mm-hmm.
explosion, my consciousness explodes to the universe. My chakras open up. I think those are the byproduct of the process of um, dissolving the separate self and dissolving your conditionings layer by layer by layer.
Mm. I
So
see.
one metaphor that I use is kind of like the third eye is like an anus. It's like an
Mm.
anus for your soul. And then you're pooping out like all the conditionings, all the breezes you've accumulated, all the samkaras you've accumulated throughout your lifetime by like ejaculating all those like separate self, old self things and
Oh,
junk out of the anus of the third eye.
I see. I
Yeah.
see. So like, I mean, it is like an ejaculation. It's just like it's like a bodily, energetic, conscious ejaculation of
Right.
energy.
Right.
Hmm.
So the experiences themselves, although they can be fun, they're not the end. They're not the end of. They're the means to an end, and that end is not really an experience.
Mm-hmm.
That end, which is just the complete dissolution of the separate identity, is not really an experience per se, because experiences come and go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but that's why I say it's more like a realization. But then it's also not exactly a realization either.
Yeah, just don't cling to it. Just it
Yeah.
happened. That's it. Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean.
So I think even like all the states that I used to be pretty attached to, like, you know, jhanic states and like samadhis and all that stuff. It's like, oh, I'm such a great meditator. I'm having this crazy like psychedelic experiences without being on psychedelics. They're just byproducts of the dissolution of, you know, the separate self of the seeker. But that's part of the process. You know, you have to get into this headspace where you think, oh, I'm the spiritual seeker where I can induce all the psychedelic experiences sober. That's the thing that's getting dissolved when that's you're experiencing that. You know, that's part of the process, right? Yeah. So that's why a lot of people go to the path, even when they take psychedelics, they always have this phase where they kind of contract, they kind of lost their experience of unity, and they're kind of depressed. That's part of the process, you know, contraction and expansion. You know, you have to go through that process, that feeling of both the oneness or the contraction of, I'm not the oneness anymore. Both of that are just the conditioning getting resolved.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you feel like that, when you feel like I'm contracted, I don't feel like God anymore. That's necessary. Because at that moment, that's when that identity of being the oneness or not being the oneness is getting dissolved.
Yes. Yes.
So you're not doing anything wrong, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's people, what you're saying is people, they've reached like certain, I don't know if you want to say like a block or like certain stages of awakening that like they kind of get stuck at. Like, you know, I am like, so a lot of people get stuck at like, I am everything, you know, unity, everything is one. But there's actually like steps further than that, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is like people get stuck at most? Is that unity, like that oneness idea that people cling to?
I would say for a lot of people it is, because that experience is so amazing and it seems so final.
Yeah.
That it's pretty easy to get stuck in there. But I'm not saying that when I say okay, so basically one of my previous videos I listed like five or six steps of awakening. So first is the separate self, the egoic self. The second is awareness. You become aware that you are a separate self. That's the awareness phase. That's when a lot of people get into awareness training. They're like, oh, I'm awareness. I'm the one that's watching the witness phase. And the third one is the God consciousness phase, the unity consciousness phase, like the Brahman phase. That's the unity we're talking about, the oneness phase. And the fourth one is, I guess the fourth one. So basically the third one is and then the fourth one is not even that. It's like the emptiness phase.
Okay. Yep. It's beyond.
So you have so you have self and you have awareness, and then you have God consciousness, which is being. Let's call it being. And then the next one, which is non-being, which is emptiness. You realize that you're not even God consciousness. You can get stuck there too.
Then something, nothing, and then the sixth.
It's kind of like something, nothing, something, nothing. Yeah, it's kind of like this. It's like something, nothing. A small wave of something, nothing, and a big wave of something, nothing. And then the sixth stage is neither being nor non-being, and both. That's the stage where you combine all the previous stages into one, and you can experience one of them, or you can experience two of them simultaneously, or you can experience all of them simultaneously. Yeah, and that's when you realize that all the stages before, it's not like you're stuck in one stage. It's not like, oh, the second stage is lower than the third stage. I look at it more like a horizontal development more than a vertical development. And each realization stands by itself. It's not like, oh, this person is stuck in non-duality. Non-duality is like what I call it the third stage, and the fourth stage is what I call non-locality, and the fifth stage is unilocality. So it's not like, oh, when you're in non-duality, that's wrong, or like you're stuck there and you have further to go. I'll say that in one sense, that is kind of true, but in another sense, each realization, each stage stands by itself, and each stage is for itself, the final thing for itself.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not like I'll look at a person and be like, oh, look, this guy is stuck in like non-duality. He's not awake. No, he's there in non-duality, fully there in that stage, which stands by itself, Yeah. And that stage also encapsulates all the other stages too. It's just like he hasn't tapped into it. Even the first stage, even the stage of the egoic self, the separate self, still is dependent arising and encapsulating with all the stages that come after. Like a little fractal within fractals, you know what I mean? The parts contains the whole and vice versa. Yeah. That's when you sort of let go of the idea of like, oh, this state is better than that state, that person is more awake than that person. Because when you still think when you're still under that presumption or that ideology, they're still clinging.
Yeah.
You know, if there's clean, there's going to be suffering. You still cling on the fact that, oh, I've realized this and you haven't, or I haven't realized it. Yeah, well, I have to realize this, that later on.
Yeah.
But then you have to realize all of them to be able to, you know, really feel that at the cellular level. So that's why I say you at the same time, you can't really like get ahead of yourself and be like, okay, I'm at the first stage. And I hear Frank talk about how at first stage encapsulates all the other stages. I don't have to do anything. I'm already enlightened. You know, it's true. Obviously, that's true. But at the same time, it's hard to like kid yourself with realizations because you just have to ask yourself, are you suffering? You know, are you free from suffering?
Exactly, dude. That's Buddhism 101 right there.
Yeah. So it's a funny paradoxical path for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Very beautiful. Yeah.
Where do you go after? Where does the path lead after?
Right, like I said before in the beginning, not sure. Right now, don't know. I have no idea. I'm just doing the podcast with you.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
After that, I'm gonna edit a video that I shot yesterday, and then maybe watch some more movies.
Watch the Batman and Robin.
Maybe I'm sure. I've been really into George Clooney since yesterday, so I'm probably gonna watch another George Clooney today.
That's awesome.
I watched The Descendant yesterday. Have you seen that?
What is it?
It's Descendant.
No, I've never seen that.
It's a movie about George Clooney, midlife crisis, pretty much. And, I enjoyed it, so I'm gonna probably watch another George Clooney tonight if I feel like it. But I wouldn't know until it happens.
That's awesome, man. I'll definitely check that out. And yeah, bro. Hey, honestly, man, like I'm glad we did this. You're an awesome dude. Like you have like amazing energy. I think you can help a lot of people in this life. Like even though you know explanations and words can only go so far, sometimes it just some people need like a direction, like a way to point them to the path. And you know, that's what you're doing, man. Like you just, the way that you describe things it's great, man. It's like, it's so like, it's right. Like I hear you say it and I'm just like, yes. I'm just like, of course. But it's just like.
That's because that's when people tell me that, what I tell them is that that's because you're that. I'm talking about you. That's why you get it. I'm talking about you right now.
Yeah, I guess that's how it is, right? It's just that like I wouldn't be able to, in my own way, in this meat suit, describe it to the best that you can in your meat suit. Like you just seem to have a very eloquent way to put it in just such like rational and logical terms that it's like
but also irrational at the same time.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Yeah, see, yeah, you can't escape it. Yeah. But yeah, overall, your energy is great, man. You're one of the good guys on this earth. So I mean, I'm glad you came to this awakening for, you know, not only yourself but everybody else on this planet. And wherever Frank, the character of Frank Yang, decides to go, I think it'll be for the greater good. You know, I think what you're doing here and what we're all doing here is something good for humanity.
Thanks, man. Yeah, you keep doing what you're doing too, man. Like, I wouldn't be here right now without you, bro.
I appreciate it.
And about the worst thing, it's really funny because why do you think that the all religion, not just Buddhism especially, is filled with shelves and shelves of sutras and words, bro?
Yeah.
Like that's it's paradoxically, words are like the furthest thing that away from this thing, but at the same time, words are pretty much the only thing that can describe and point people to this thing.
Yeah.
It's like you can't. It's hard to extract insights about, you know, about being and about like, you know, experiencing consciousness by watching a movie. I mean, movies have their place, music have their place, definitely, but words are really the most direct way to point to somebody at the moon, even though, you know, the words are just fingers pointing to the moon, but not the moon itself.
Exactly.
But paradoxically, it just happens that words are like one of the most efficient tools to do this.
Yeah.
So that's why all religion texts talk about, oh, you can't describe it in words yet. They fill bookshelves with like, you know, texts and sutras.
Yeah,
and concepts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people like a lot of people in a lot of traditions, they really don't like words, especially in non-duality. Like in Buddhism, there's a lot of philosophy, a lot of words. In like non-duality, there's always a war between like non-duality and Buddhism, which, you know, I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, that's missing the point.
Yeah, but in a lot of non-dual schools, they really like shy away from words and concepts, and That's funny because Ramana Maharshi, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, Ramana Maharshi, he's like the god of the non-duality tradition, right? He said you have to use the mind to deconstruct the mind, use the mind to dissolve the mind, right? If you don't use your mind and use concepts, you can't dissolve the concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's actually been known, I've read, to just literally just sit in silence in a room full of people.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
why a lot of non-dual, I think that's why a lot of non-dual traditions like shy away from words so much, because Ramana Maharshi doesn't talk at all. He's like, oh, the Michael Jordan of our tradition don't say good. I better not say anything. I better not think. I better not use my mind.
Yeah. It probably has something to do with it.
But each individual also have their own different, not just different realizations, slightly different flavors of the same realization, but different manifestation of the same being, but different ways of expressing it. So just because Ramana Maharshi expresses his enlightenment that way, it doesn't mean that enlightenment is experienced only that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For some other people, enlightenment is experienced and manifests completely differently. Maybe it has nothing to do with spirituality.
Yeah. That is true. Yeah. I guess the guru lies in all beings if you really look hard enough.
Yep. That's it.
I think on that note, we can probably wrap this thing up, man.
Yeah, that was cool, man. How long was that? Like an hour? Cool, man.
A little over an hour, yeah.
Cool. We got a lot of cover, I think.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I think this was a great conversation. I feel like we could just keep going on and on and on, to polarity, and just keep going.
Yeah.
But it was great, man. I definitely.
I think I covered. I think we covered some stuff that I haven't covered on my other podcasts.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, hey, you can use this whole thing. Feel free to take it, and whatever audio you want to use, you can use it. Yeah, this was just a cool experiment for me, and I'm glad you wanted to come on here and do this thing, man. This is cool.
Oh, sorry for the delay, man. I was involved in this music video.
Oh, it's all good. I'm actually curious to see that. What's the music video?
I've done a couple of music videos in the last few months.
Like your actual music video?
No, I'm just acting in it.
Oh, okay.
My friend is a director, and he has some characters that he said only I could do because it involves muscles and craziness. So you awesome. Got me. So I'm just helping him out. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I'm excited to see that.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'll put the footage from that in this podcast if I ever edit it, because we're talking about that, right?
Awesome. Oh man. Well, this was great. Like I said, Frank Yang, this was a pleasure. I'll definitely be in tune for all your videos in the future. And if anybody wants to check out Frank Yang, if you already don't know who Frank Yang is, I'll link everything in the description. And yeah, do you have any closing words that you'd like to give the world?
Nope. That's it.
That's it. All right.
Yeah, send me the link after you post it, and I'll share it on my social media and stuff.
Will do, bro. We'll do. But yeah, I'm off to probably go to bed. It's about to snow over a foot.
Oh, cool. Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna get
fun. Have a good night, man. I'm gonna go get my day started. I just woke up, actually.
All right. Well, have a good day.
Okay.
Peace out, man.
Yeah.
See ya.
Peace out.